there is dis-ease that is created when two frequencies are not aligned. And it occurs when you leave your comfort zone without the people that are relative to you. And so they maintain a snapshot of the comfort zone you, and you now are the learning zone you, or vice versa. And it creates a separation of void and dis-ease. So how do we dissolve the dis-ease? Well, number one, today's topic is the overlap agreement. And this agreement has changed my life. And I want everyone, and I encourage you to reach out for the guides, the exercises for today, but to get a copy of the agreement, because it's been my experience that most people are not living in the infinite loop of giving. They're afraid to ask, and then they get resentful and guilty when they are helping everybody and not asking for help themselves. They're not looking to create this more giving, so I can be given more, I can receive more, and ask for more than more, so I can give more than more. And so, being a lawyer, it's always been a incongruity in my life of formalized binding agreements. And the reason is that in most circumstances, we don't need to bind each other because time, emotion, and value changes instantly when we come to an agreement, when we make a decision, a mutual decision for mutual benefit. And that's what agreements are, right? Mutual decisions for mutual benefit, not mutual punishment, and not mutual conflict. But at its core, there are times when we need binding agreements, when we have rules and regulations and mortgages and secured interests and things like that. But the majority of the time, that's not how we can act in business abundantly. We want to create an agreement that is aligned with time, emotion, and value. And today, the fast-paced nature of business, it requires, in the majority of the time, agility. Unfortunately, the traditional contracts remain rigid and unyielding, and the lawyers are so good at stimulating interest to attack and to create conflict and to cost us money. And as our needs and priorities and resources shift away from outdated formalized agreements that stifle growth rather than support it, there is a new approach necessary. And it's a requirement in our private networking group that everyone, when they're onboarded, fills out what they do, how they can help, how they need help, and what they're willing to do for that help, and vice versa. And we need a new approach that preserves value while allowing for this flexibility of time, emotion, and value changing so quickly. And this is where the overlap agreement comes in. It's overlapping our normal course of business. It's overlapping our day. I have termed it the modern day handshake. It's a modern day handshake that captures, memorializes how both parties can support each other without a rigid commitment. It recognizes the people, the resources, and the opportunities that will drive growth. It evolves with the changing circumstances, needs, and priorities, the time, the value, and emotion that is moving and changing quicker than ever, and provides the freedom that we need to adapt and to reassess, to pre-prioritize, prioritize, and reprioritize, or albeit to even say, no, I've changed my mind. It is not mutually beneficial anymore. By applying this concept in business, sales, personal growth, agreements, we can remain relevant, mutually beneficial, and create a memorialization that's sustainable over time to create a community of frequency, a neighborhood of people that are helping one another and know people that will help one another. That creates a community of people that are buying from each other and selling for each other to their mutual benefit, to the abundant benefit that is inherently, naturally available to all of us without the rigidity of an agreement that is binding and litigious in its inception. And the first lesson about the modern day handshake is to understand that we are just memorialized what we want to do for each other and how we want to get paid for it. If I look at all the people that I talk to, they all will tell me that if they had an overlap agreement in place, that they not only would have made millions of dollars for themselves, but more importantly, $1 million for other people simply by memorializing, by remembering, hey, that dentist in South Dakota is willing to give me a Starbucks card if I refer a family or a friend to them. And in the case where they can't do it, they're going to feel open and communicate, hey, in this situation, it didn't warrant the Starbucks card because I was already doing them a favor and losing money. And the time, value, and emotion wasn't the same as when we memorialized our agreement that I would give you the Starbucks card. And this is exponential to thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, and even millions of dollars. That people, because time, emotion, and value changes, they ruin their relationship because they hide from the fact that they need to change their mind. They need to change the agreement because they want to help each other and make it a mutual beneficial situation. But now it becomes one of separation, embarrassment, resentment, and guilt. We need to maintain the win-win thinking that created the agreement in the first place. We don't come into agreements so that both parties lose. We don't come into an agreement so one party loses and one party wins. We come into an agreement to create win-win situations focusing on mutual benefit because one man's trash is another man's treasure. There's a symbiotic, synergistic relationship of value. But when we come in with our eyes wide open, that time, emotion, and value is changing regardless of our good intentions, then we can continually adapt instead of have to adhere to the rigidity, litigious nature of a binding agreement that cannot take into consideration the uncertainty of the future. And there are circumstances where we need lawyers and we need those types of agreements. And we can have a binding referral agreement. And I'm happy to give you both the overlap agreement and a binding referral agreement that can help you and assist you in your personal and professional desires in divine direction. But in the majority of the situations, when you start to utilize a win win thinking, a focus of mutual benefit, and overlap agreement, a modern day handshake, success will be built on mutual value at all times, not some kind of negotiation or trade or hedging or forecasting of one person benefiting more than the other. There are no one sided gains in the modern day handshake and the overlap agreement. Agreement should create a long term trust that we both have great intentions and want to continue our relationship no matter what, as long as it's mutually beneficial. And in the case is where it's not, we'll let it move forward until the next time when it may be, or make adjustments to the memorialization, considering the time, emotion, and value that changes, making sure that the success for all parties rather than short term one sided wins. In business, in sales, in life, prioritizing collaboration and mutual benefit over competition, scarcity, negotiation leads to a sustainable growth, clearing the interference between us and the more than enough that exists, shifting from transaction and negotiation to a value driven relationship, memorializing our intentions at the time of the circumstances that existed, not trying to be prospective in the uncertainty of the future. This will foster loyalty and trust. This will foster keeping our agreements adaptable, flexible, and ensuring that it is taking into consideration the changeable needs of each party in a memorialized intention to help one another, to mutually benefit. These agreements, these modern day handshakes, are based on mutual benefit and enhanced what we want in these forms, meaning it enhances trust, it deepens relationship, and creates long-term success of a community of people that buy from each other and sell for each other. We need to evaluate these agreements and continually do so. We need to shift from a short term transactional negotiation approach to a long term relationship driven mindset, reframing negotiation as a collaboration effort other than some zero sum game where if I'm winning, you're losing. No, if I start to win too much, we're adapting. If you start to win too much, we're adapting. If I'm losing too much, we're adapting. And in the majority of the time, the modern day handshake is good enough. It actually will foster growth, not conflict and litigation. The lesson two of the overlap agreement is the understanding of adaptability and emotional awareness, which is the key to these sustainable agreements, to these growth agreements, where we're maximizing opportunities for everyone by either helping them or knowing people that can help them, or vice versa. In business, emotions and market conditions always are in flux. Instantaneously, when we come to an agreement, time, emotion, and value will change. And so many people ride this roller coaster of rigidity because time, emotion, and value changes sometimes before they walk out the door. Think about the laws and regulations of cooling off periods. These are ways to compensate for that instantaneous change of time, emotion, and value. These rigid agreements fail to keep up. They're unrealistic, leading to frustration, inefficiency, and a ton of missed opportunities. These missed opportunities were the motivation and the inspiration of the modern day handshake, of the overlap agreement, of my private networking group, because too many people were missing opportunities and were creating conflict when it wasn't necessary. Agreements that evolve alongside the changing of circumstances remain beneficial for both parties and fosters that sense of security, trust, and abundance. Adaptability ensures that agreements remain valuable, relevant, and beneficial over time, not in a certain snapshot or circumstances that exist for only a mere second. Before we make major decisions, we need to one assess whether or not it needs that rigidity. It needs a litigious referral agreement that binds us to each other no matter what. As long as we take into consideration the timing and risk tolerance of that rigidity, then we can go ahead and accept those types of terms. But the majority of the time, we don't have the tools necessary. We don't understand there is a vehicle, the modern day handshake, to have a memorialization in accordance to circumstances, time, emotion, and value changing. Over 90% of the time, you don't need a rigid agreement. There are times that you do. And I suggest you make sure you know your timing and risk tolerance and seek advice from experts in order to facilitate the alignment of the timing and risk tolerance that's necessary in some sort of secured agreement. But so much is wasted, so much is lost in the scarcity of thinking all agreements need to be that way when the majority of them don't. We need to cultivate emotional intelligence by recognizing when the fear or attachment to the past are clouding our judgment, because we know the rigidity and the lack of adaptability of those types of agreements. And so instead of moving forward, we don't move forward at all. Instead of asking, we don't ask at all. And the goodness in us, the kindness in us, the generosity in us end up giving and not noticing what we could have been given, and definitely not feeling worthy of receiving ourselves, and absolutely not asking for, if I do this for you, would you do this for me? Or do you know anyone that would do this for me? Once again, creating mutual benefit, elevating all ships and all people that are in the modern day handshake. Now, how do we find out how we memorialize these things? what to memorialize, how to take a snapshot according to the circumstances of the day and to let them evolve according to the circumstances of tomorrow. It is the open-ended question guide that I have, which also I will send with the overlap agreement to you in the exercises and guides from today. Make sure you notate my email, david@dmeltzer.com. I'll be happy to send them to you. But the open-ended question template allows us to unlock hidden opportunities. It allows us to not only give more, but to elevate our awareness to all that we're given. The best agreements today come from being more interested than interesting, from discovery, not assumptions, not a feature and benefit dump, not proactively aligning what we think people need, but instead asking the right questions to reveal the needs and the opportunities that are not obvious otherwise. And when we're asking questions, we want to figure out mutual benefit, mutual value, notating once again, not to be repetitive and annoying, but just to remind, remember, and recollect you with what value is. Value is simple. It's giving people more of what they want, what they like, what's working for them, and what they know, or taking away what they don't want, don't like, what's not working, or what they don't know. Those are the only two ways. So your open-ended questions and in the open-ended question template and guide will gear you to figure out, how can I figure out the simple question, would it help you if I provided you more of what you like or took away what you don't like? It is the right questions that reveal this revelation of opportunities of all that we're given, even when some people see punishment. There's opportunities when the market drops, there's opportunity when the market rises, there's opportunities when people F you over, there's opportunities when you F people over. The right questions lead to the deeper insights and stronger and more sustainable agreements that are in the intention of mutual benefit. But you need to utilize the gratitude of finding the light, the love, and the lessons and forgiveness in order to facilitate all that you're given so that you can work on receiving it and asking for more. The modern day handshake allows for all of this with those open ended questions and also elevating our ability to ask, do you know anyone that could help me? And if you do, here's what I'll do for you. And if they do, here's what they'll do for us, and I'll do for you, and they'll do for me. Can you see how we start utilizing the more than enough attitude in the beautiful, adaptable overlap agreement, the modern day handshake that says, here, this is what we're agreeing on today. But when things change, we're agreeing that we're going to work it out to our mutual benefit or allow each other to say no, to change our mind. I know we went into this thinking this is how it's going to work, but it's not working that way. COVID is hit and it becomes an impossibility. In no way would I hold you to that agreement when the circumstances were completely different and the supply chain was abundant and now it's not. Why should I win so much or why should you win so much? Let's adjust it so that over time, we both will benefit and the people around us will benefit. Let's replace the yes, no questions with open ended questions, inquiring to expand the discussion of what you like and don't like, what's working, what's not working, what you know and what you don't know. Let's regularly assess our agreement, our handshake, by asking, is this still the best path forward? And seek to understand all that's given, receiving, and asking to understand before proposing solutions originally or proactively for the future, allowing our true needs to be articulated quantitatively and observed. The fourth lesson in the modern day handshake, the overlap agreement, is that we need to be more interested than interesting. We need to utilize the triple A strategy of alignment, action, and prepare for adjustment. That's the basis of the overlap agreement. The AAA strategy of making sure that we're diagnosing before prescribing, avoiding premature agreements when we're not ready, taking our time to get alignment to find out what you like and don't like, what's working and what's not working, what you know and what you don't know. avoiding these premature agreements by utilizing the AAA strategy of alignment, action, and preparation of adjustment. That's what the modern day handshake does. And that's what the overlap agreement will provide for you at 90% or more of the time. So many people jump into agreements without fully understanding the needs, the timing, the risk tolerance that leads to an inefficiency and misalignment. Just as a doctor wouldn't prescribe medication without a diagnosis, without alignment, agreements must be based on clarity, balance, and focus and insight to be most effective, as well as allowing for the adaptability of circumstances to interplay in our mutual benefit. All agreements should be rooted in understanding, not rigidity, other than those that are prescribed by law or by security or interest in that matter. Rather than utilizing compelling events, urgency, or pressure, results are best served in the long term outcome perspective. We need to take the time to fully understand the other party's needs before making our agreement, our commitment to each other, our memorialization, to capture it within the context of adaptability, that this is where we sit today. And as time, emotion, and value changes, we are both open minded in order to facilitate a mutual benefit moving forward and understand that complicitly, whether it's verbal, written, implied, or even with consideration, the majority of agreements should be under the context of mutual benefit, not rigidity of a binding agreement that does and can't take into consideration the truth that time, emotion, and value are changing. We must distinguish between surface level issues and core challenges to ensure that we're constantly aligning, prioritizing, reprioritizing, the right solutions are in place, and always in the context of the modern day handshake, as in the past, be open to saying, no, I changed my mind. I can't move forward. This doesn't make sense for me. I apologize if it puts you at a detriment, but there was no need for litigation. There was no need to make me lose, for you to lose, for other people to lose. Let's figure out either a new way to move forward or not move forward at all, but remain trustworthy, mutually beneficial. Can I refer someone to you that may be aligned with what needs to be done today according to the circumstances of the day, instead of limiting ourselves with the meaning of the past agreements that have not worked out. Before finalizing an agreement, we must consider whether it will still be relevant in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, or 10 years. Understanding our timing and risk tolerance is part and parcel to the AAA strategy to prepare for adjustment. Knowing that even though time, emotion, and value will change instantaneously upon our memorialization, whether it's written, implied, oral, with consideration, which is payment or not, it doesn't matter. It is whether or not the first decision is this need, does this need to be a binding agreement? If not, in the majority of the time, let's memorialize this with the best intention to mutually benefit moving forward in the long run. The freedom to change your mind. Lesson 5. The freedom to say no, the freedom to change your mind, how to build true relationships and trust, the availability of feeling confident that if circumstances change it, I'm okay to tell you they've changed and I don't want to move forward. I've changed my mind. The ability to say no or adjust an agreement without damaging the relationship is critical to long term mutual benefit. It's critical to the more than enough world that we live in. Not putting it within a box of constructive man made time that makes the actual circumstances irrelevant. Only our non negotiables are relevant to circumstance. It's these negotiables, agreements, that absolutely should be continually evolving and aligning with circumstance to maintain trust and integrity and freedom to say no or to change our mind. In the modern day handshake, the overlap agreement should empower all parties rather than restrict them. I'm going to repeat that. Agreement should empower all parties rather than restrict them, ensuring that they continue to serve everyone's best interest in a mutually beneficial way, an abundant way, aligned with the circumstances of today. Trust is built when agreements allow for flexibility and reassessment without fear or resentment or guilt. Fear, resentment, and guilt will separate us from those parties that we obviously were most relative to because we wanted to have an agreement with them. We wanted to help them and help ourselves. And now, because of fear, resentment, and guilt, we have separated ourselves from the most important people in our lives because we haven't taken into account the reality of the circumstances of the day. And we project our insecurity, our fear, resentment, and guilt onto others when we can't perform or they can't perform. Instead of just being disappointed, we're resentful, guilty, and fearful, which ruins the relationship. So no longer will we work together or help other people work together. Does that make any sense when our intention was mutual benefit in abundance? We need to normalize, like in the past, the idea that an agreement can be adjusted or declined without harming our relationship. In fact, knowing that it's protecting us, promoting us, and perfecting us, elevating us. We have to understand that knowing our timing and risk tolerance, that usually, almost always, an overlap agreement is more beneficial in the long run than a binding litigious agreement, and that we now can receive more and be given more and ask for more so we can give more than more, et cetera, and so on. So before committing, ask whether the decision is based on a genuine benefit or an external pressure, a circumstance that inevitably will change as time, emotion, and value always does. In fact, instantaneously from the time of an agreement and a decision, whether it's written, implied, oral, or with consideration, provide space for both parties to say no or to renegotiate without the resentment, guilt that occurs, or any obligation or litigation. There are times when we need a structured, secured agreement. I get it. Know your timing and risk tolerance, and you will know when those agreements are necessary. I'll be happy to give you a templated referral agreement that, in the majority of the time, will cause this resentment, guilt, and disappointment. But the majority of the time, stop limiting yourself. Stop limiting yourself from the abundance of what you can give and what you're given, what you can receive and what you can ask for. Create memorializations, create the modern day handshake by memorializing. I will give you that template to do so, to allow you to adjust and evolve with the time, emotion, and circumstances that I guarantee will change. Put your confidence in each other, in the confidence and benefit, in the win win. The overlap agreement is the future of business, personal life, and sales. It is the future. Why? Because it takes into account the future. It takes into account the circumstances of the future, which are absolutely uncertain. The overlap agreement redefines how business and sales agreements are structured by prioritizing flexibility, adaptability over rigidity, and mutual benefit over one sided win or loss commitments. And it allows for the adaptability in a consistently changing world, a rapidly changing world, in order to facilitate trust and transparency in the decision making and the alteration and adaptability of those decisions, and the ability just to say no or adjust the agreements when necessary and continue to move forward in mutual benefit in abundance. Adopt the overlap mindset, the modern day handshake. Treat agreements as evolving relationship, not fixed contracts. Decide your timing and risk tolerance when those fixed contracts are necessary, and you will see the majority of the time they're not. That you are building and joining a community like ours to be abundant, to buy from each other and sell for each other, to live in the win-win world of more than enough of everything for everyone. Use open-ended questions to be more interested than interesting, to discover the hidden needs and opportunities before committing. Remove the pressure, the compelling events from the business and personal life, from your deals, allowing agreements to grow, not die, and then create conflict. You can't sell a secret. You also can't solve a secret. That's why the modern day handshake is so important. We need to constantly reprioritize, reassess. We need to pre prioritize and prioritize as we create a memorialization, a codification of what we want to do according to the circumstances of the day together in order to create more abundance, to create more than enough. And we need to ensure agreements continue to serve everyone, regardless of the time, emotion, and value in circumstances that are changing ever so rapidly. Build trust through this adaptability and flexibility instead of hurt it, diminish it, create resentment, guilt, frustration, conflict, and even litigation. Position all of our agreements that we can, according to our timing and risk tolerance, as a collaborative and adaptable effort rather than a restrictive, rigid communication that is punishing. By embracing adaptability, transparency, and mutual benefit value, all of our relationships, business, personal, sales, become stronger. They become longer. They become more meaningful and more abundant. The overlap agreement is the modern day handshake. It is the future of sustainable and successful business relationships. It is the basis, the backbone of our private networking group that is curated by people that not only want to help each other and know people that can help each other, but are capable of doing so. We use the overlap agreement as a modern day handshake for everyone in our neighborhood, in our community, in order to facilitate a bunch of people buying from each other and selling for each other and codifying, memorializing, and adapting to the circumstances as they present themselves with the pure intention of the win win mutual benefit of elevating all and codifying it so that we don't feel resentful and guilty, that we all benefit when we create abundance. You will, by utilizing the modern day handshake, the overlap agreement, you will make more money. You will help more people and you'll have more fun with far less interference or conflict. I encourage all of you to reach out, not only ask us for the overlap agreement, but join our private networking group. The overlap agreement, this exercise and guide is available to everyone. All you have to do is email me, david@dmeltzer.com, david@dmeltzer.com. This has been one of the best mechanisms that has helped all of our neighborhood to live in abundance. Nick of Wam, I'll take some questions. Does that sound fair?
That sounds more than fair. And happy Friday. Thank you so much for the incredible first half of today's training. This has been the overlap agreement training, the modern day handshake. And for everybody that would like a copy of the guide from today's training, let alone a copy of this overlap agreement, please just reach out to David directly, david@dmeltzer.com. To kick off today's Q&A, David, I have Eric Meltzer, who has been patiently waiting, ready to rock and roll. So, Eric, it's great to see you, my friend. Happy Friday. Feel free to unmute yourself and kick us off with the first question.
Hey, gosh, I just want to say I don't have a question, but I just have a lot of gratitude for having you and David in my circle, and it has been just such a joy working with you and getting to know you too. So, thank you.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it. And I just love having you in the group. And we really hope that more people will participate with this overlap agreement. And any questions come to mind?
Gosh, nothing today. No, it's been like the one-on-one sessions we've been having have been so immensely helpful. I don't know where to go from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And we do ready to rock and roll with the question. So Colleen, feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yes. Okay. One of the things that really resonated with me, and I'm hoping that you can give me some more clarity on the lesson, is you just had mentioned the genuine benefit versus the external pressure in either, making introductions or putting deals together for someone. I'm hoping that you can clarify kind of what you mean by genuine benefit, obvious, but also that external pressure.
Yeah. So, the only certainty that exists besides time outside of us is what's inside of us. And so outside of us are these compelling events, pressures of what we want people to think we are. So there's the fear of missing out, the fear of other people's opinion, that drive us to make decisions that aren't aligned with our values or our timing and risk tolerance. And so benefit is only ascertained by giving more of what we like or taking away what we don't like, aligned with our timing and risk tolerance. And when we are pressured by what other people think, or the fear of missing out, or some other ego-based scarce emotion, we are not aligning with the timing. And when we don't align with the timing, we're not aligned with the risk as well. And so knowing that the certainty of our own self, of what we want, our timing and risk tolerance, is the backbone to our feeling that we've done what we should have done. It doesn't stop the disappointment if the risk appears to be valid and aligned with what we wanted to do. It doesn't mean that everything works out. If I'm risking everything over 2 years and I lose everything, I will be really disappointed, but I'm not going to be resentful and guilty because it was aligned with my timing and risk tolerance. But if I'm pressured and I don't, because of the pressure, align it with my timing and risk tolerance, and I lose everything, but yet I did ascertain that I was okay losing everything over 2 years, and because I was pressured, I lose everything, but don't know my timing and risk tolerance. Now I'm resentful, guilty, and litigious in my nature, attacking in my nature, and it actually interferes with the light, the love, and the lessons that I'm supposed to receive from the opportunity that was disappointing. I lack that ability to expand and grow in my own benefit. And so it is pressure or external circumstances, mainly the fear of missing out or the fear of other people's opinion, that cause those compelling events that misalign us with the timing and risk tolerance that either we have acknowledged and we ignore, or we haven't taken the time to understand. Does that sound fair?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Des.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That's my man, Des. All right. Very good, Nick of Womness. What do we got? What do we got?
David, I do have another friend here live for us on Clubhouse. We have Sean, who's been patiently waiting. So Sean, it's always good to see you, my friend. Good morning. Happy Friday. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask away.
Appreciate that. Good morning, guys. David, have you ever given your wife the I've done this, the personal development flu? What I mean by that is just affected her in a negative way on your journey of self-development, because maybe she didn't see the growth that you were moving towards, and she was just negatively affected by it. How do I overcome that?
I love that. No one's ever phrased it in that way. The personal development flu. I've talked in the past with both my wife and I and everyone on earth. The best example of the growth flu or the personal development flu is normally seen when people go away, either to college or for work, or they leave their comfort zone and they move out of the comfort zone into a learning zone, whether it be personal development, specifically dogmatically through Napoleon Hill or Bob Proctor or Wayne Dyer or Dr. Joe Dispenza, whatever your gig is. But the idea is in the development flu, the growth flu, when we leave our comfort zone and we move into a learning zone, uh, our frequency changes. And when we hang out with our friends, we don't feel aligned. And this also occurs in our most intimate relationships. If they remain in a lower frequency and we move into a learning zone, there is a separation that can cause dis-ease between parties. And I love the idea of calling it the personal development flu or the learning zone flu or whatever is resonating with anyone on here today. Um, and so, knowing that this separation has occurred because it doesn't feel the same, or there is resentment, guilt, attacks, projection that occurs, statements you will hear like, you think you're so smart, or when you're human, oh, you're such a fraud. You tell people how great you are, they think you're amazing, and here you are with a need to be right, a need to be offended. You're angry, you're frustrated. You had a 6-second emotional burst of cortisol of chemistry, and instead of stopping, dropping, and rolling, you had another emotional burst of chemistry, and it takes 90 seconds to dissipate, dissolve each of those emotional bursts. And now you tell people about minutes and moments. You spent 2 hours interfering or creating dis-ease, and now you've created dis-ease with me and you because I don't trust you, and you're not the same person you were. This is all the personal development flu. I love it. The first answer to your question is yes. There is dis-ease that is created when two frequencies are not aligned. And it occurs when you leave your comfort zone without the people that are relative to you. And so they maintain a snapshot of the comfort zone you, and you now are the learning zone you, or vice versa. And it creates a separation, a void, and dis-ease. So, how do we dissolve the dis-ease? Well, number one, we know that we can't change other people. We utilize understanding in order to facilitate the dissipation of the dis-ease by asking questions of the other person to see if we can't motivate them, inspire them to understand us. They don't have to change, they don't have to expand or grow like we have. It is understanding its appreciation that dissolves, dissipates, and disappears the dis-ease that's created from moving from a comfort zone between people and this new learning zone. And so, through collaboration and coordination and communication, we can elevate the understanding of this is where I'm coming from. It's that same idea of DAI, of diversity, appreciation, and inclusion through understanding. And the only way that we get that type of alignment is through asking questions, not telling people, but asking questions about what they like and what they don't like, what's working, what's not working, what they know and what they don't know, in order to facilitate value. And so we can ask things like, would it help you if? Or have you ever considered this? Or I'm really curious why you feel that way. When we ask questions that allow or elevate the understanding, it will reinforce the frequency in which we exist through appreciation. I'm now seeking the light, the love, and the lessons from my wife, or she's seeking it from me, or vice versa, or both. I think just the awareness of the personal development flu, of the separation from the comfort zone to the learning zone, is an amazing growth factor. And my encouragement and advice would be to utilize the open-ended, open-minded question guide in order to facilitate understanding by utilizing appreciation with gratitude and forgiveness, and be accountable of, knowing what I know today. This is who I am, and this is what I would love to have from our relationship. Does that sound fair? More than happy to continue this conversation because it does and warrants much more, because this is a very common thread of separation that occurs through this, what I call comfort zone to learning zone flu. You call the personal development flu. It's a dis-ease that can be healed or put at ease through appreciation and understanding. Does that help you in any way?
Absolutely. I appreciate that so much.
What a great point. So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it. All right, Nick of Womness, we got 10 minutes left. That's plenty of time to rock and roll with more of our community. Please email me once again. It's posted up there, david@dmeltzer.com. Love to provide you the modern day handshake. Love to have you join our private networking group. Love to be of service or value. We've been doing this for over 26 years, free Friday trainings. We got something every single day. You can have access to me and our neighborhood every single day. Nick of Well-Oiled Machine, what do you got next?
Absolutely. We got Brian Swift, who just joined us. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask away, my friend.
Well, thank you, and it was fantastic seeing you. And Dave, thanks for your time. I know you were pulled in 9,000 directions as usual, but taking the time meant so much to me and the audience. So,
thank you.
So, have you ever, in this overhand agreement, this old school way of doing business, which I love, come across a time where you both were ready to move forward, in some way, shape, or form, but they wanted more of a formal agreement, and you were fine with just this handshake of an agreement? How do you get through that?
Great question. And I know you and I are both recovering lawyers, so we could probably figure this out. It takes repetition to get all the nuances of the modern day handshake or the overlap agreement. And the key component, Brian, is a lesson that goes far beyond any type of agreement, whether it's binding or not, whether it's legal in its nature or not, whether it's secured or not. And it really stems from understanding our timing and risk tolerance. And so the more transparent we are in the timing and risk tolerance that we have, and if a signed binding agreement is aligned with my timing and risk tolerance, I'm going to move forward with a signed binding agreement because it's aligned with my timing and risk tolerance, and I'm okay with that because I've taken into consideration the risk of the circumstances changing. But in the case where we start with a non-binding memorialization, a modern day handshake of intention that, hey, let's figure this out. Here's a starting point. Brian, if you do this for me, I'll pay you 20%. If I do this for you, you'll pay me 20%. Or I give you a McDonald's card, you give me a Jack in the Box card, whatever it is. But then the circumstances change. And the circumstances change. And now one party, me or you, the timing and risk tolerance is not aligned with that type of situation where we can adapt. There's too much risk if the circumstances change because maybe there's some type of commodity that value changes and I risk too much by making it adaptable, or there's some laws that are involved that we found out that without some sort of binding indemnification, we're putting ourselves too much at risk. Of course, there's multiple circumstances that exist. The bigger lesson or the most important thing to remember is none of it really will create dis-ease if you know your timing and risk tolerance and are capable of articulating it, saying, according to my timing and risk tolerance, I can't move forward unless we have a secured interest, unless we have a binding agreement, or vice versa. But at its context, in the inception of the modern day handshake, we both know our intention of open-mindedness, that if the timing and risk tolerance isn't aligned anymore, that you have permission to say no or go in this way, the adaptable evolution of that overlap agreement of the modern day handshake. And so I really want to encourage and repeat and be annoying with the fact that if you don't know 3 things before you get into any agreement, even ones that are not binding, even the modern day handshake, even ones with your family, If you don't know your timing and risk tolerance, number one, your perceived value, which based off of your confidence and comfortability of articulating that value, usually to exceed what you're asking for, two, and three, your bottom line, the math of what you're willing to do according to when you're going to be or have to walk away. If you don't know these three things, timing and risk tolerance, perceived value, and bottom line, you shouldn't even get into a modern day handshake, an overlap agreement, or a binding agreement. And you should maintain your knowledge of all three according to any subject matter topic or expertise of significance or relevance or prioritization. That is, I need to know my timing and risk tolerance, my perceived value, and my bottom line. And if you do that, all of these adaptable changes, including saying no, will have less dis-ease and guaranteed no resentment or guilt. We'll still have disappointment when it doesn't work out, but no guilt or resentment, which causes interference, disease, and accelerates us in the wrong direction with response to that fear. Does that sound fair, my friend Brian Swift?
Awesome. Love the three things. And I'm assuming within that risk tolerance, that risk tolerance includes things like your trust, your gut, your intuition, things of that nature that you've worked and built upon that relationship.
Yes, so it includes your perception of the intellect, the intelligence, the facts, the intuition, and the inspiration, the emotions. All of those are taken into consideration when you're figuring out your timing and risk tolerance. Emotional expense is one of the expense that's most ignored in the facilitation of timing and risk tolerance. A lot of people don't take into consideration the risk of the emotional expense. A lot of times they just look at, especially determining the bottom line of what is it worth economically, comparatively. The emotional expense may cause opportunity costs and interference to hard costs, and they don't take even a considerate approach or intention in understanding the emotional expense. So the answer is absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, David. Thank you, Nick Wam. I appreciate all the insights and wisdom.
I love it, man. It was so nice to see you, and thank you being so supportive in my time of need and inspiring me with great support and questions. Let's take the last question.
Actually, I'm going to take a question off the line here, David,
Sure.
to help close us out. And that question is in regard to having, and with the overlap agreement being non-binding, do you ever have any difficulty when articulating the non-binding nature? And if so, if people are not grasping this virtual handshake concept, what is a different way to articulate that?
Yeah, I think in the aspect of, in people, you can hear it all the time. They don't understand. It's just a memorialization, a snapshot in time according to the circumstances of the day. And so what we need to do is be annoying about articulating it. And when I say annoying, it is a key aspect of being a great leader and a great parent to be annoying, which means to be repetitive and honest. And so if you're having a difficulty explaining how this is just a non-binding agreement, a memorialization, a modern day handshake that has only reciprocity and no risk, it's adaptability and no rigidity. If you have difficulty, then just keep repeating yourself until they can repeat it back to you, and ask them to repeat it back to you. So from what I said, what do you understand? So from what I said, what do you appreciate about it? From what I said, what do you like? What don't you like? From what I said, how should we move forward? Let's create a go, no go plan according to what I said in this memorialized email document, etc. That's why I give a template for the overlap agreement to everyone, including the exercises and guides for today, to help facilitate the repetition and honesty that's necessary in order to have a mutual benefit intention of abundance of more than enough of everything for everyone. What a great way to end. Love you guys. I'll see y'all soon. God bless you. Be more interested than interesting. Remember, be kind to your future self and do good deeds.